In life, we all encounter obstacles, and those obstacles come in all different shapes, sizes, and forms. The question is, how do we handle those obstacles? Do we attack them head on, or do we allow them to make us quit? Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast, where we aim to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up on themselves, their dreams, or their goals. We will interview successful people from all walks of life as they share their no-quit stories when they had the choice to give up or give in, but they didn't. We thank you for listening, and we hope to be that jolt of positivity as you go for your greatness. Welcome to episode number 215 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is integrity. Our quote of the day comes to us from C.S. Lewis. Integrity is doing the right thing, even when no one is watching. Today's episode is sponsored by the good people over at West Fair Communications, who publish the Westchester County Business Journal and the Fairfield County Business Journal. These newspapers do a wonderful job in covering all aspects of the business world within two of the most influential markets in the New York metropolitan area. You can also take advantage of their daily news feeds, which keep track on the companies and thought leaders in these important regions. For more information, take a look at www.westfaironline.com. Trust me, once you start reading, you won't quit. I'm excited for today's interview as I met our guest through one of our earliest guests on our show. In the highly competitive and extremely performance-based investment world, Anmol Singh shares some really key statistics but important principles for both life as well as business. He touches upon integrity, his evening routine, and the importance of doing what you say you're going to do, but also when you say you're going to do it. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Anmol, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. So the first question we ask everybody is, are you ready to bring it today?
I am 100% ready to bring it. I was born ready.
Awesome. So the number one objective of our show is to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up. And I was curious if you have either a no-quit story of your own or perhaps a really challenging time that tested you and you could have given up or given in, but you didn't.
Definitely. I have. When I was in college, I was learning how to master the financial markets, stock market trading and currency trading. And the whole first year I lost money. I didn't make it in the first 1 year. And it was challenging. And I was ready to quit at one point because you would go to, parties and people would ask, hey, how's that trading thing going? You still doing that trading thing? And they would look at you funny. And there's many times that I wanted to quit, but I didn't give in. I didn't give up. I kept on, tweaking my strategy, optimizing my strategy. And despite all the hurdles, despite watching my friends in college get, six-figure jobs and me sitting in the dorm room trying to figure out how this trading thing works, it was a challenging time, but I overcame it. I kept through it. I, got in touch with my mentors, see where I could improve, and I kept going.
So what was it during those tough times? What that kept you going? Was it the mentors, or were you reading things or watching things? What kept you going during those tough times when all your friends were getting those six-figure jobs?
I think it was a combination of a few things. One of them obviously was wanting to prove other people wrong. I think people look down on that, but I think there's some value in wanting to prove people wrong, or maybe prove yourself right, that it can be done. So I think that combined with me watching and being in touch with my mentors and seeing them make money doing it, so I knew it was possible. I just probably didn't know the right strategy. And, figuring that out, watching other people make money gave me the confidence to keep going. And combining that with the ability of, proving myself to others and proving myself right or proving them wrong, that it can be done, this is not gambling, kept me going.
I like how you mentioned proving others wrong or proving yourself right. And I think it's one of those things where I love the quote by Frank Sinatra is the best revenge is massive success. And I think there's no better way than to show others that you can do it. So I think that's pretty neat how you touched on that. I wanted to ask if you wouldn't mind just sharing with our listeners a little bit about what you do today and who you are.
Sure. So now I do trade the stock market and the currency markets for a living. And apart from that, I have a business where we also teach and train other traders how to do this themselves, through training programs, courses, webinars. And then more importantly, we also back some traders with our own capital. So once they go through the program, but they don't have the money to trade yet, but they're probably good at what they do, we usually provide them the capital that they need to trade the markets in exchange for a percentage of what they make.
Now, I think it's interesting because it goes along with what you said before about mentors. Do you believe that's a type of mentor relationship that you do?
Definitely, and I think it's important because, training people is great, but then can you hold their hand and show them how you do it? That's a different story. So I really believe in that, and we do that every day. We have a membership program where people come in and then they kind of, it's almost like you're sitting next to us. We share our webcam, screen, audio in real time while we actually trade, so they can see us winning or lose. I think that relationship with the students is super important to achieve success in anything.
Speaking of success, I wanted to ask you, what does success, or how do you personally define success?
I think true success to me means, being, getting to a level that you want to get to in each and every area of your life, and then more importantly, being okay with where you're at with each area of your life. Because you could, be successful in business, but your finances are, maybe your health is a mess. That doesn't do anything good. That's not true success. You might have the best health in the world, but you're broke. That's not success. So I think success is being, you know, okay at each and every area of your life, and then more importantly, you being okay with where you're at.
No, I think that's a great definition, and I love how you tied it into health and finance, because there are so many people that are financially successful but emotionally, mentally, relationship broke, and the flip side is as well, as you could have amazing health, but if you have zero economics behind you, you'll probably struggle quite a bit. So, wanted to just touch on the mentor piece for a second. I think it's interesting that people are in those relationships where they mentor people and they've also been menteed. So I was curious, how did you get into mentoring other people and giving them some capital? Was it something that you were raised or something you were taught?
I think for me, the firm that I was working with before, they kind of had the similar program. So if you go through their coaching program, they know that, okay, this person can trade. Then why not put the money behind it? I think that kind of shows confidence in your own teachings. So that's what they did with me, is they trained me and then they provided me the funds to trade. And in exchange, I was giving them 30% of everything that I made. So for me, it was, a great decision, because I know that, okay, if they go through the program, that's the same program that I went through. It works. I'm making money. A lot of people are making money. So it works. So I was confident in putting my own money behind it. And then also it's a good business decision, because if they're going to make money, they're going to do well, and you get a cut of that. I think that's a great deal for everybody.
No, it's a great point. Is when you teach people and train them the right way, there are upsides for everybody, and I love how you learned it and you realized that it was a successful business model. So why not teach it? And I think it leads into that success leads clues. And I think a lot of times people want to recreate the wheel, and sometimes it's obviously good and there are some huge successes. But I think for the most part, a lot of the things that are repeatable and they're trained, the reason that's why, like I said, success leaves clues.
100%. Success always leaves clues, and if it works for you, it'll probably work for other people too.
So I wanted to ask you an interesting question. If you had to define yourself, but you could only use one word, what word would you use?
One word I would use is persevered. Like, keep going. I never give up.
So one of the things we focus on with our company is the word accountability. And I think accountability is so important in today's day and age. Wanted you to just, if you wouldn't mind just touching on what accountability means to you.
I think accountability to me means being a person of integrity, which basically means doing what you said you were going to do and then doing it when you said you were going to do it, right? And that is really important. And you have to be accountable to yourself. You can generate accountability through partners, through coaches and things like that. But I think the person you need to be most accountable to is to yourself. To being a person, man or woman of integrity, living as your word, and following through then on every word that comes out of your mouth. So if you say on Monday, I'm going to start eating healthy again, you better make sure that Monday you start eating healthy again. If you have to be accountable to yourself first and foremost.
We touch on that quite often, and I think one of the things we reference is a self-accountability mirror, and I think you hit it on the head, is you can have a mentor or a manager or a boss that in essence you're accountable to, but the reality is you need to be first and foremost, and you need to first and foremost hold yourself to the highest level of accountability than anybody else holds you to. And I think it's really important, because I think a lot of people miss that.
Right, because who do you spend the most time with, right? Yourself. Like, most of your life is time spent by yourself. When you're sleeping, you're by yourself. When you're waking up in the morning, you're in the shower, you're by yourself, right? 80% of the time people spend by themselves. You only spend 20% of the time with other people. So if 80% of the time you're not accountable for what you're doing and what your words are coming out of your mouth, then that's most of it. So the person you spend time with the most is yourself. So make sure to be accountable to yourself. And even if you want to prove other people wrong, first make sure you can prove yourself right.
No, it's interesting, and I had not heard that statistic, but I think it's really important. Like you said, when you wake up, you're by yourself in the shower. And it's an interesting way that you tied into that. Wanted to ask you a question. If you could go back and give the 20-year-old version of yourself one piece of advice, what would that be?
I think one piece of advice I would give my 20-year-old self is, don't worry about other people, right? Don't get swayed by the opinions of others. Because people wanted me to quit trading a lot of times. Even my family members sometimes would say, "Oh, isn't that like gambling?" And I was always worrying about that. And I was looking at other people and, maybe have, anxiety towards them or animosity towards them when, I'm looking at other people getting six-figure jobs and I'm sitting in my dorm room. So one thing I would tell my younger self is don't worry too much. Keep going your path, be passionate about it, be true to what you want to do and your course of action and your purpose, and everything else will fall into place. So, have a silver lining, optimistic mindset, and don't get swayed by others. Let them, they're doing you do you.
No, I think that's great advice that we probably all should have given ourselves or heard at the age of 20. If I had the opportunity to give you an opportunity to have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
That's a very tough question. I would say somebody I could have dinner with, dead or alive. I mean, I think I would want to have dinner with Paul Tudor Jones. Just being in the financial world, he's one of the best traders that ever lived. So I think having dinner with him would be ideal, just to learn, how he manages himself and he's trading billions of dollars worth of positions.
I think that'd be quite an interesting dinner. One of the things we often talk about are different books that people are reading and different things that resonate with them. And I was curious if you've read anything recently, or perhaps you're reading something currently that you'd like to recommend to our listeners.
I think my all-time favorite is still by Carol Dweck, Growth Mindset. I think that is still my all-time favorite book. But one thing I just finished reading, which I found was an awesome book, was Crucial Conversations. I think that's a pretty great book that people should read. It'll help you not only, in your life, but how to deal with other people, your colleagues, your partners. And it's all about communication and communicating the right way so you get your point across.
Might be a tough question to ask you, but I was curious if you have the best advice or if you remember the best advice that you remember receiving.
I think the best advice that I ever received was about integrity from one of the, so I attended a workshop a while back, and there was this 50, 60 people on the workshop. And then the mentor, he kind of knew my history a little bit. And when I stood up on the mic to speak at the workshop, he said something to me after the workshop. He said, "Hey, Anmol, one thing I noticed, you have no integrity. You say you'd want to do this, you want to do that. There's a lot of words coming out, but why is it not backed by action? Where's the action behind it?" And he told me this 3 years ago. And from there, my life drastically changed because I looked into my own life and I said, that's true. I said, I'm going to do this on Monday, or I'm going to finish this by, Tuesday. And I didn't follow through on that. So that's a lack of integrity. And I started noticing a lack of integrity in other areas. Maybe your mom calls you and you're like, "Hey, I'm just in the middle of something, Mom. Let me call you back in an hour." And you never did, right? Maybe you told your friend, "Hey, let's meet up next weekend." And you never followed up. So I noticed these little lack of integrity. And then I went on a rampage journey after that to be a man of integrity and living as my word.
I think it's really neat that you touched on that, because I think a lot of us do that, and maybe it's not just with our moms or friends. It's, I'll do this next week, or hey, when I get out of work. And the reality too is that we become busy and we don't think about it. But as you said, is to be a man of integrity or a woman of integrity, it's doing what you say you're going to do. So if I say to you, I'll call you back in an hour, and I don't, the reality is I did not live up to what I said I was going to do. And I think that's really interesting, because a lot of people do things but don't follow it up, like you said, with action. And for me, action is one of the most important things, because you can talk a big game, but at the end of the day, you still got to back it up.
100%, and also doing what you said you're going to do, but also doing it when you said you were going to do it. Because if you said you're going to do this, by tomorrow, and you did it the following day, maybe you still did it, so you can feel good about it, but you didn't do it when you said you were going to do it. There's still lack of integrity. And then when you notice that lack of integrity, to not apologize for it and say, "Oh, I'm sorry about that. I'll do it next week." Rather than saying sorry, you put some things in place to ensure that doesn't happen again. So if your goal was to eat healthy starting Monday and you didn't, well, what are you putting in place to ensure that doesn't happen again? That could be signing up for meal delivery service, subscribing to it, right? That's an action. So as you said, everything should be followed by action.
I love how you touch on that, and I think that's the missing ingredient. Is it's not only saying something but backing up with action. But even the step further is what are those exact steps you could do? And like you said, very good example is if you want to eat healthier, maybe you don't have the time in your schedule to cook a fresh meal all the time, but you do have the ability to order a delivery service. So I think there are always ways, and like you said, there are always systems and things to put in place. But the reality is that's the other part of the action is going ahead and saying, okay, I need to do this. I've committed to doing it. Now, how can I make sure that I put the right steps in place so I don't let myself down?
Exactly, 100%.
One of the things we've identified over the last probably year or two with our podcast is the importance of a morning or a daily routine. And I was curious if you yourself have either a morning or a daily routine that you swear by.
I think I have more of an evening routine than the morning routine. I'm definitely not a morning person. I wake up and I'm like answering emails because there's a lot of emails. So first thing that I do is, I answer a little bit of the emails. I head to work, get in touch with everybody that I'm in touch with, maybe my affiliates, maybe, my manager at one of my other retail stores, maybe getting in touch with, somebody, just getting the statistics, how everything is faring up. That's the first thing that I do, just to get an overview checkup, right? So people these days have Apple Watches. It tells you everything, how your heart rate's doing, how many steps you did. You need to have that for your businesses too. So that's the first thing that I do. But I have more of an evening routine. When I get home from work, I kind of sit with myself a little bit, turn off the phone technology, and just take 10 minutes, just kind of think where my purpose is. Am I heading in the right direction? Can I improve in certain areas? And that's my evening routine. I do that. And then I take a walk. It's maybe an hour. I go downstairs. I just walk for like an hour, and that's my thinking time. Put on a pair of headphones and just walk for an hour. I don't check my phone or anything. Just take a walk. And in that walk, I get a lot of my best ideas, and a lot of the self-reflection comes through that hour walk. So that's my evening routine.
Now, do you do it every night?
I try to do it every night, unless if it's not raining, then I'm pretty much doing it every day.
It's interesting that you have an evening routine, but the reason I love that question is, and I preface it, is do you have either a morning or a daily ritual or routine that you swear by? And I love that you touched on the evening piece, because the reality is you have a very specific duty within your field, and like you said, you're checking emails from all over the country and all over the world. So that's your morning and what you need to do. So I think it's awesome how you then tweak it so when you get home, you take those first 10 minutes to just kind of disconnect, but then you put your headphones on and you go for a walk. And I'm very similar in the sense of when I'm at the gym doing my cardio near the end of my workout, I put my music on, and that's when I also have some of my best ideas and things that really hit me. And I think it's interesting how people have their different routines. Now, have you always been an evening person?
Yeah, I've always been an evening person, and that's mainly because before moving to New York, I used to live in London, but I used to still trade the U.S. stock market. So I would kind of work midday because the stock market 9:30 here would probably mean like noon or 1 o'clock there. So I always used to be a person who sleeps late at night and kind of wakes up in the morning and works in the more in the evening time.
No, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I figured that was why, because obviously there are different trading schedules and different markets all over the world. But I think it's so neat how you've adapted your schedule from a morning routine to an evening routine. And the reality is the reason you do that is because that's what works for you. And that's why we asked that question on the podcast, because we want to provide ideas and suggestions for people. And the reason I love that question is there's no right answer and there's no one size fits all. And the reality is you being involved in many different markets is very different than somebody who has a 9-to-5 job here and doesn't rely on other time zones or parts of the world.
Exactly. And what people need to keep in mind is that, don't copy someone's routine. Make your own routine. Because I was in that boat where for the first 2-3 years, I was like really feeling down on myself. I was like, oh, people talk about meditation. Every book I read, they meditate in the morning. They wake up at 5 in the morning. They go work out. And I tried that for the longest time. I couldn't keep it up, like waking up at 4 or 5, going to work out, then meditating. Because morning, I'm always catching up with emails. And then I felt bad about it. Like, oh, I'm not able to follow this. Every high achiever is doing visualizations, meditating, writing journals, all that stuff in the morning. So I just said, you know what? One point I said, that doesn't work for me. Right? Morning is busy for me, checking emails, and I'm not at my best in the morning. I'm kind of better in the midday. So I tweaked that routine to my schedule and what my body suits to, rather than what other people you might have read in a book. Take the ideas, but make it your own.
No, that's so important that you touch on that, and I'm glad you did, because the reason I asked that question is to make people think about it and make people understand that there are different ideas and concepts. But you hit it on the head: is don't copy somebody's just because it's successful to them. That you can take some ideas and concepts and try them on your own, which is what you did. But ultimately, you figured out what worked for you, as opposed to just copying somebody and making it work.
100%.
So, as the title of our podcast and our company is No Quit Living, I wanted to ask you, when people face adversity and they find themselves with their back against the wall, why do you think that some people just give up and throw in the towel while others never quit?
I think they don't have a strong enough why. Like you got to find the why that makes you cry. You got to find why you do what you do. Why are you working so hard? What is your goal? And you got to, drill down deep. And something I learned from Tony Robbins, or I don't know if it was Tony Robbins or somebody else, but they say, ask the question 7 times. Why do I trade stock market? Well, hey, why? Well, answer could be money. I want to make money. Then second question, why do you want to make money? Well, because, I want to buy all these things. I want to have a nice life. Well, why do you want it? And you keep drilling down until you find the why, which could be, hey, I never had it as a kid. I always watched my friends having it. I never had it. Maybe that's the find. So you find that why that kind of maybe gives you goosebumps, right? Maybe you get a little tear in your eye. Find why you're doing it. When you have a strong enough why, you keep going and you never ever give up, right? If you're giving up, your why is not strong enough.
I love that. I've never heard that asked the question 7 times, but obviously you drill down and you really decide and find out whether it is really your why. And I love how you said, find the why that makes you cry.
100%. You got to find it, because once you have that trajectory, man, like during the hard times, that will keep you going, because you remember that while you're doing it.
No, it's so true. I couldn't agree more. So we all have challenges, obstacles that we face each and every day, regardless of how successful you are or your age. And I was curious, what is your biggest challenge that you have each and every day?
I think my biggest challenge each and every day is balance. Or now I've found a better word that I learned at a workshop. It's integration, like work-life integration. I think my biggest challenge has always been the balance, because I'm pretty extreme at everything that I do. So if I get freaky about my health, and like in college, I was like, I want to get in the best shape of my life. Like when I had 8 packs, 8-pack abs, like fully, doing well. And then I was like, I want to make a lot of money. I went all into my business, ignored my health. So I think now for me, it's just integrating all this together. And, again, as I said, true success, being successful in each and every area of your life rather than just one area. I think that's my biggest challenge is right now to integrate everything, manage my online businesses with my physical retail businesses, with my trading, and kind of integrating all that together and still having, that healthy routine and, social lifestyle.
I think so many people sacrifice certain things for their life. And like you said, your focus was having those abs, but then you changed focus, and now you're focused on your business and making money. The reality is, and I love how you touched on, it's the integration of the work-life balance and the work-life integration. I think it's always interesting just to get somebody's different perspective. So I wanted to ask you, what's the best way for our listeners to connect with you or follow you or find out more about you and what exactly you do?
Sure. I think the best way they can get in touch with me personally would be through Twitter or Instagram. My handle is the same on both platforms. It's at Delta90, DELTANINETY. And apart from that, they can find out more about me at preppingforsuccess.com/book. So my book just came out a few months ago, and it's all about what we talked about today, about integrity, about success, and basically just 10 things that I learned, in my journey that really helped propel my success. So that they can find out more about that on preppingforsuccess.com/book.
Now I got to ask you, what does Delta 90 stand for?
Sure. So Delta 90 is one of my, in trading, it's a trading terminology for options trading. So I've been using a certain kind of option strategy that worked for me a while back. And since then, I've had that name all over social media. And now that we have a lot of followers, I didn't want to change it. So I kept it going.
Now I had to ask you, what's the significance of the 90?
A 90, there's a Delta 90, there's a certain kind of option, that mimics the price movement of a stock. And that's what I traded for like 3-4 years, the same strategy, and I just kept it the same since then.
That's awesome. So I wanted to ask you, what if you have some parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners?
I think the parting words would be that, after listening to this podcast, don't just, move on to the next video or next thing that you're watching online. Just really think about what we talked about today and focus on being a man or woman of integrity. living as your word. So really pay attention to what comes out of your mouth, and make sure you take action on everything we talked about, and not just make it like, oh, that was a fun, entertaining podcast, but actually go out and do it.
No, I love it. I think that's amazing advice, because me personally, I listen to a lot of other shows and I subscribe to different videos and things. And a lot of times you go from one to the other and you kind of don't follow up. And what we talk about on our podcast a lot and from the stages are CTAs, which are calls to action. So I think that's great advice, is don't just listen and move on, become a man or woman of integrity, but at the end of it, take action.
Definitely. Action is the number one key for anything.
I love it. So I truly, truly appreciate you spending some of your time with us, and hopefully we can talk again soon.
Definitely. I enjoyed chatting with you.
Thank you for listening to episode number 215. Anmol is an extremely successful trader, and I believe it is due in part to a conversation he had about 3.5 years ago regarding integrity. He shared that due to being in the financial world, he realized that a morning routine didn't work for him. Instead, he has built an evening routine that works for both him as well as his schedule. His advice on this topic I thought was spot on. It's okay to get ideas and suggestions from others, but he made sure that we don't just copy someone else's routine. Instead, we create our own and figure out what works for each and every one of us. Although his parting words are very short and sweet, I think they're extremely important. He suggested that instead of just finishing his podcast, or any other for that matter, and just jumping on to the next, we should think about and or analyze what we heard or listened to. Become a man or woman of integrity, and make sure that at the end, you take action. So my question to you is, how often do you take some time out from a book, a podcast, or a workshop, and really and truly process what you just learned, heard, or read? I challenge you today to think about your own integrity and what you say and tell both yourself and others. As you go for your greatness today, hold yourself accountable. And not only do what you say you're going to do, but do it when you say you are. Thank you. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.